elephant lovers. Deb Air here. As Crystal and I journeyed through what do you do when you feel like you fucked up, which you'll be discovering that Crystal and I had our own experience of that with each other. The internet decided to be a bear that day. So you may hear some voice changes. I had to fill in a clip. We don't want you to get distracted by that. Just enjoy the ride. Enjoy the feeling and discovery of when you feel like you have fucked up.
How you gonna get free this time? Falling into a blue sky mind. Came to me in that song, my friend.
Hey, so welcome back to Me, You, and the Elephant with Deb Air and
Crystal Hayes.
oh, we are excited to be here in preparation for the podcast. We will often have the podcast before the podcast. So what's beautiful about setting a container of intent is that when we do that, that information comes right to us. We had this podcast set for today, and Crystal and I were in communication this morning, and guess what we had come up? We had an elephant come up between us. So we're going to share that. And what was really cool is when you share that intent with people and you make it clear, whatever that intent is. So in this case, the intent is the podcast. There are so many elephants out there. We are going to, every time we ask a question, it's choosing to look at that elephant, walk up to it, and we know that the doorway into the elephant, into your own learning and embodiment and understanding for yourself and self-compassion is to just ask the question. Because that question is what brings us in to the space, into the gap where all the magic can happen. So that's what happened to us this morning. When we create a magnifying glass of intention, we don't have to be married to that forever, but we can say, this is what I desire. This is what I want. This is my intention. And all of a sudden it creates this vacuum where the universe is like, oh, why didn't you say so? So here we are. The question is, what do you do when you feel like you've fucked up? Crystal, what do you do when you feel like you've fucked up? Do you want to share what happened to us this morning?
Well, it's coming to mind how when you painted this picture right before the podcast and you were like, you know how you see this elephant and you walk up to the elephant and you knock on the door. And I was picturing myself, okay, what do I do when I have the elephant in the room? I just watched myself walk up to the elephant and like just run right into it nose first because my eyes were closed. I was like, so what do I do when the elephant's in the room? I close my eyes and wish for a dog to be there. I'm like, there's this elephant in the room. I start shaking and just like do all these things. And so it was really sweet as you were like, and what are we going to do to that elephant? We're going to just knock on the door. We're going to ask the question and the door is going to open. And I could just picture my eyes doing that. Instead of knocking on the door, I was like, I'm going to open my eyes. I'm going to be here in this space, in this gap with my beautiful elephant. And I'm going to talk to my elephant.
Elephants are very powerful animals, right? They're usually a symbol of power. And if we imagine that power is also a synonym for life and for choosing life and for honoring life, we're not making the things that we don't look at, aka the elephant, that is easy. In fact, that's what I love that visual, Crystal, because it's like, what elephant? Bam! And you're like, what's going on today? I don't understand why I feel so frustrated. I feel so fill in the blank. You either bang into it because your eyes are closed, or you see it and you look the other way. So we're just going to show ourselves to you and just hope that revealing our experiences can also be shared experiences. One of the things about Crystal and I, we don't live in the same place. Now, I know that's not uncommon for a lot of people that work together, but for her and I, and for me, in my experience, I have owned a brick and mortar business for 28 years. So I'm used to the in-person experience. One of the beautiful parts is that we knew we had something really worth nurturing. So when Crystal moved away from New Hampshire and moved to Virginia, we said, this doesn't have to stop our connection. And what it's lent itself to is, wow, what is it like when you're not in someone else's rhythm, someone else's physical space? So I think that that's why this came up, although feeling like you fucked up can happen in person, virtually, any which way.
Oh, yes. With yourself, it doesn't even have to include another, right? How many internal conversations has that been?
The question is, what do you do when you feel like you fucked up? Another way we can say that is when you feel like you've done something wrong. And I guess my question for you and to consider as you hear this today is feel into those more tender spots that know that, like, for me, I sometimes when I feel like I have done something wrong, I don't even know what I did. That's how it was when I was a kid. It brought me back to a moment with my grandmother, who I was super close to. And I was watching a horror movie. I was in, I don't know, high school, I think. And I was the only one in the house other than my grandmother, who lived downstairs in an apartment we made her, but there was no bathroom down there. So when she had to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, she'd walk upstairs and go to the bathroom. So little old me is watching some movie that just scares the bejesus out of me. And I lock all the doors because my parents are gone. And I locked the door to the basement where my grandmother would come up to go to the bathroom. So I fall asleep on the couch, petrified. And then all of a sudden I hear the loudest banging, like there's a nuclear bang happening. Boom, 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 boom. Now, mind you, my grandmother and I were immensely close. And I wake up, heart pounding, and I open the door because I realized I didn't even know where it was coming from. I unlocked the door, and there's my grandmother looking so angry and screaming at me and going, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And my heart is pounding, right? Because not only am I just woken up from a deep sleep, I'm also now seeing one of the most important people in my life screaming at me, and I don't even know what I've done wrong. Now, of course, we can analyze it and go, yeah, she was just scared, she didn't know. But my point is what hit my nervous system is I really valued being a good person. What imprinted in me is that I did something wrong, and I don't even know what I did. I can still feel those little pieces of emotion with that. I think we all have moments where I fucked up. And sometimes a very hard thing to admit, because we also simultaneously value being a good person or doing the right thing. One of the things that most certainly can come up, which came up, both of these things came up for me actually with us this morning. I can feel a charge, and I'm thinking, like, what did I do? And why is this person has a charge back? And all of a sudden communication gets a little foggy. And that's what was happening. And God bless Miss Crystal. She said, I think this is our elephant in the room. And what's beautiful is the intention of, like, this intention for this podcast is just that. We're tired of pretending, slamming into the elephant or side-eyeing it and pretending it's not there, that we're calling it in. So who is it coming in, right? Is our relationship here. You're calling in the power of life, the power of the elephant. So here it is. Check it out.
I love it. Oh my gosh, so true. And I love how you spoke to the story with your grandmother first, because I think as I'm looking back on this morning, it happened just that it was like my nervous system, and I'm sure your nervous system as well. It's like it started speaking to us, and we were like, like, what's happening? We're feeling a little something, but we kind of keep trying it from a different angle. Well, let me try saying it this way, and let me send a text that says it that way. And it was like, oh, like, there was just this thing that our body right? It was like remembering and kind of like going through, and all that we knew in the moment, it was like, something's happening. Something's happening right now.
You said something so important. I think this is really important to pause and listen to. Here's the thing. I developed a protection personality over that feeling, right? What we do is when we have wounds, we create a protector that will come eventually. And we will develop an identity around that that says, this is what I do when I feel like I've done something wrong. I try harder, I speak faster, I leave the room, I'm going to describe it this way, I'm going to twist my body that way, and then they'll understand me. Then I'll feel good because then I'm not wrong, or that I didn't mess up. I'm okay, I'm enough, and or not too much. So what our first strategy was whipping words around the elephant. Like if we were facing each other, there's a big, huge elephant. We're like, whoosh, how about this? How about that? I get on my hands, like, how about that? We're like, why is it not working? And then Crystal exclaimed, I think this is our elephant. I think that's what it is. And that's when we stopped. We stopped coming from the personality we developed to protect fear. And here's the direct link that goes to shame. We will do anything. We have been supported in doing anything to avoid shame. Ultimately, deep underneath the feeling of feeling like it fucked up is shame.
Yeah.
So when the first thing that happened in this case this morning is Crystal called it out. Okay, we got to name something. Boom, elephant spotted. And it really sounded like this because it was like smushing up against it, like, oh, the room.
I run into an elephant. Tell me if you see it. My eyes are closed.
Like, Deb, can you see? I think. Damn it, I do, but I actually don't want to admit it. But yeah, there's an elephant. Maybe. I think that was I'm like, maybe. Keep going. You may be right and you may be wrong. The first thing we did is name it. There's something happening here in the space between. The space between is calling for something different. We got to look at this. We got to stop doing what we're doing because it's literally being muffled around and through this really gigantic plump space called elephant between us. And then what we allowed ourselves to do is listen and speak. We take inventory of our businesses. We have mission statements. We have goals, all these things that we apply to our careers, our businesses. But we so seldomly do that as articulately or as honoring in our connections, our personal connections. So, I was saying this a moment ago that Crystal and I are not just dear friends, we're sisters together, we are peers, we are coworkers, collaborators. But I think it's really important to distinguish between, and I know Tony Robbins used to talk about this, he probably still does, but the difference between having your friends and choosing peers. And sometimes your friends can also be peers, like in this case with Crystal and I. But the thing about having peers, the people you choose as peers, you have a certain set of agreements that will say, yes, I will go there when the elephant's there. And that you have collective tools between you that allow you the infrastructure and paradigm container that allows for something more to happen. Because otherwise, we walk around and there's many other outlets like therapy and other things, embodiment work, but there's still the personal interchange that we cannot and really don't want to escape from. So once we named it, okay, it's like one of us is going to speak. Can I just share what I was feeling? And I think and I'm just going to try to discover this with you. So one of us spoke and one of us listened. And the person, and I felt this with Crystal, and I hope you felt this from me. When I was listening to Crystal, I was listening to Crystal. I said, you know what? I'm going to put my tender heart here. I love you, tender heart. But right now, I'm going to listen to this soul because I love her, I care about her, and I honor that there's a story for her to share. And so I wasn't listening to her with my next, well, I have to prove myself. I was listening and I felt heard by her. And when that happens, you're in the space between each other because you're not hanging on to the preconceived idea of having to have an answer for when somebody's sharing. You don't have to have an answer for when someone's sharing. You just need to listen to them. It's part of our humanity where we can just go, you know what? I'm going to pretend that I have no wounds right now in this moment, that I don't even feel tender. That doesn't mean my tenderness isn't there. It's not a disrespect. It's just taking a moment to go, what if I was whole and I could just listen from my heart, listen to this person without having to defend myself. I'm going to say this boldly because I know it sits within all of us. Sometimes we don't think that we're defending ourselves and we have all these really cool tools around it. But I'm just asking you to check in with that truth. Can you listen from a whole place in a moment? And when you're with a peer, you know it's okay because they're going to do the same for you.
I agree. And I'm so glad that you shared on that particular step, seeing it and giving the permission. I felt like we just like stepped into some kind of vortex, or we were just like, boom, we're in this together.
The space and the elephant.
It really was.
Both like, okay.
It was totally different. Yes, it was totally different. I could feel my nervous system relaxed. Like the minute that we were like, we're going to go there together. I just felt like we put on some superpower suits or something. I was like, whoa, yes, this is going to be a great space to be in. And I just appreciate you speaking to all the different ways that how we listen and how we speak can bubble up. And I really appreciated that. I also, as you were speaking, I just had my hands on my heart and I was like, she's got the stage. This is her. I see her, even though I wasn't saying anything and you couldn't see me. I was energetically, I see you and I want to hear what you have to say. I want to hear this version of you. And then you equally did that for me. It was so powerful.
It really was. And I can just think of the story of Krishna Das. Those of you that don't know who Krishna Das is, he's a kirtan, which is like a call and response Hindu singing. He is from New York. He became quite famous in the kirtan world. But anyways, he would talk about him and his teacher, him and his friend, his teacher, guru in India, and how they would be so passionate about their belief systems of God, of divinity, all of it. Like, what is the bigger aha? This is not what this is about. My point in sharing this is that he would explain that he'd get up and they'd be in each other's face, literally, passionately spitting in each other's face because they were just so passionate about what their inspiration and belief systems were. And as they were doing that, you would, if you looked from the outside, you'd be like, oh my God, what is going on? And then they would just be hugging and being like, oh, and they would be receiving because that was their version of giving themselves permission. Like they never stepped out of the sacred circle. It's not like, hey, you know what? You just injured me. You offended me. So I'm out. Or I think it's important to name things, but I think the way that Crystal and I managed that, we were able to, I almost, funny enough, felt when you were speaking, Crystal, like this whole elephant thing was just actually this womb we stepped into where we're safe, where where shame is valued. Shame is valued in the way we go, oh, this is part of our human experience. And in shame, if we can hold it and we can hear it and witness it in each other, then we can, I don't even want to say we can just heal it, that we can liberate it, which becomes a free energy for us to then bring into our life and our relationships differently. Because one of the things that I see happening with you and I, Crystal, is that we're recognizing those things prior. And because we were just in person, which was so lovely. We were at an event. We were overbooked, and like Crystal's doing cartwheels and twisting and turning and doing all the things. We were doing all the things because we wanted to create magic for people and we wanted to really support them in the way that we value so highly. Then what happened is we were both being really stretched. And I love what you said. So we had a little moment and it was so beautifully childlike, but it was like, it's that like I fucked up and it's shame. And shame usually drops the game. It usually drops out. And it's like shame is something that we separate. We separate when we feel shame and we hold it as if it's our own. And really, if we sit in the womb of the elephant with the person, the place, the thing that can see us, can witness us, it literally liberates, and the darkest shame turns into a blossoming flower. When we had our little fight, you said, what did you say? You said, I've never had such a cute fight before. Didn't you say something like that?
I didn't even know fights could be cute like that. I was like, what is happening? Our hands were up. We're like, you're holding a table. I'm holding a table bag. I'm like, just put the table in the bag. I can carry the table. I was like, just the bag needs to be with the table. And then I'd say something and you repeat it. And I'm like, I didn't mean to say words like that. I didn't mean for that to come out of my mouth. And then it's like a walk away, come back.
And so the reason I'm even bringing this up is because when you choose your peers, when you choose your relationships, your intimate partnerships, remember to apply the same honor that you do to your businesses, to all the things you do. Because ultimately, this is what relating does. It illuminates our dark spots. And so if we're expecting to have deep relationship and never have shame come up or vulnerability arise or have the feeling that we've fucked up sometimes, then we end up missing the biggest gem that intimacy and relating with others allows us. And we are relational creatures. So we're here to illuminate each other, not to avoid the elephant, but the elephant has all these nooks and crannies and we go, oh my God. And so that was what was so beautiful, is like, oh, if things aren't coming up between us, how deeply are we truly connecting? Or do we just divert that? And that doesn't mean you go that deeply with everybody. We have different ways in which we can choose to connect with people. I think it's becoming a little bit more conscious of who you're choosing in your life. So to go back, what happened with Crystal and I this morning when we were able to have that exchange, and the exchange happened from the active witnessing. And then suddenly there's like this reflection. And one of the things that happened with us today is that we had several things we were doing together. Some things were very logistical, like check the box, things with numbers, very, let's say, mind oriented. And then there's the podcast in which that's a whole different energy to kind of prepare for. It has a more fluid flow to it. We're in our passion. Not that the numbers can't be passionate, it's just a different rhythm. And then we had something else. So what rhythm Crystal was in and what rhythm I was in the moment were just different. And instead of really being able to pause a moment and here's the longing and connect. What happens if we speak before we make rapport or connection with somebody, you might as well like mute your voice, because the communication goes away when we haven't actually created a rapport of connection where that speak and that listen and the listen and speak can happen. And that's what happened with Crystal and I, because we know each other so well. We're like, okay, we did, but we weren't actually connecting with our rhythms in the moment. So that's what we did. And that connection created a reflection that then, here's the cool thing, and I'm sure you've all experienced this, once you were able to call it what it is and be in the vulnerable piece of really the shame that's underneath there, acknowledge that shame is part of our humanity. It is not just mine, and it should not be experienced alone in that way, that my shame sees your shame. I listen, you speak, I listen. It literally reorganized everything. Then it was like, oh, we can do that right now. Oh, we can do that. And suddenly, like you said, your nervous system got more easeful. Everything got super simple. Go figure.
I loved it. And that's what I kept coming back to there was respect and honor for the steps that it took to get there. It's not that I was like, oh, we just need to like live in the morphed energy and this space is the space to be. It was such a beautiful stepping stone, following the breadcrumbs, however we want to put it.
Notice what happens in your body. What I felt happening is I felt a tightness in my body. I felt a charge in my gut. And I felt self-judgment wrapped around that, and then kind of trying to push myself forward to what we were supposed to do. But when you can pause a moment and just go, wait a minute, let's just take a second and name what's happening. What happened, and you know this, you can have an argument. How many times you've had an argument, you're like, what were you arguing about? Because you're never arguing about that thing. You're arguing these identities that are wrapped around shame to try to protect yourself. And I think it's time for all of us to just take a moment, choose some peers that can see and have the same value systems as you, where you can say, I'm willing to go there, because it is time for humanity not to hoard shame and have it create more separation. It's time to walk forward into the relational creatures that we are, so that we can learn. When we learn what's underneath that, we find that we're not as different as we thought. So, as always, we are inviting you to bring forward your stories of how you think you fucked up, or maybe stories in which you were able to name it, able to really take a moment and listen and speak, and what kind of revelations came from that. We're so grateful that you're following us, listening to this, and we're so looking forward to, as always, for more. Trust me, Crystal and I are conjuring lots of elephants, so we've got lots of things to bring.
It's an elephant party.
And now, Trevor Hall with Blue Sky Mind.